Hi guys, it's Tony Fitzgerald here and welcome to another episode of the Green Miracle Man Project. And today I'm really excited. We have Len May all the way from the United States. Len is the president of Earth Healthcare, and how I came across Len was that I was watching the 7th webinar episode of the Sacred Plant, and I listened to Len's story and I went, wow, this guy's like me. This guy's on the same wavelength, on the same hymn page. And I thought I'd reach out to Len and say, look, let us interview you. And he's kindly said yes. And here he is today. Len, g'day from Australia.
G'day. How's it going?
Yeah, pretty good, mate. Pretty good. How's yourself?
Excellent. Always great.
All right. Well, let's keep this tight. Let's get into the conversation. What I'd like to do first, so people and the viewers and the listeners can get to know you better and what you're doing over there in the United States. By the way, you're doing some amazing things. Is to tell us a little bit about you, your journey, and how you discovered cannabis as a healing property, and more so the fascinating things that you're doing with the DNA and lab testing and matching the plant with the body and all that sort of stuff. I just find that totally amazing and something that I think is really on the money. So I'll hand it over to you and let's start there.
Thank you, Tony. I appreciate it. I appreciate giving the opportunity to have this this platform and this audience that can reach people around the globe. So I think it's an amazing opportunity. What you're doing is amazing, and I love your story as well. So it's very inspiring. I guess I can kind of give a little bit of background about my story and how I came about discovering cannabis as a medicine. I was born with ADD and attention deficit disorder. And when I was a kid, I always knew when I was in class, I always knew that I sort of drifted every once in a while. I wasn't hyperactive, but if things didn't stimulate me, my mind would drift. So now I know how to utilize that correctly and utilize it in an artistic way, but back then I wasn't really clear. So at some point, I think when I was like about 15 years old, I was diagnosed with ADD, and they gave me a bunch of pharmaceuticals. What they did was they allowed me to focus, but they also numbed me. I had no feelings left whatsoever. And I was hanging out with some older kids one day, and they they offered me to smoke. And I just started smoking cigarettes at that time, which I haven't done in about 25, 30 years, but I dabbled as a kid. And so I'm like, okay, let me try this. So I took a puff, started coughing, realized that it wasn't really cigarettes, it was something else. Went back to class and discovered that I can focus. I still had feelings, and it was totally changed my whole universe. And that was the first time I felt cannabis as a medicine for myself. The second time is, and I'll fast forward in my life, I became the president of the Cannabis Action Network. So I fought for legalization as an activist. And I held a rally at Independence Hall in Philadelphia, where the Constitution and Declaration of Independence was all signed and formed, and all on hemp paper, by the way. And I had a woman by the name of Elvie Musica, who was my keynote speaker. And she was the first person, not the first, the fifth, I believe, person to get federally prescribed cannabis for her degenerative glaucoma under a program that was called IND in the United States. And this is federal land, and she had a jar that had an FDA label on it. And she opened up that jar with pre-rolled cigarette joints, and she medicated right there in front of federal rangers, and nothing happened. But so I'm like, all right, so legally, we can see the future. Everybody was staying in my house after the event, and we woke up in the morning. I was dating a girl who was an artist at the time, and she made this big sculpture for me. And all we hear in the morning is crash, bang. And Elvie happened to walk in to the sculpture and broke it. And the reason why is because she was legally blind with degenerative glaucoma. And I could see, I was upset about the sculpture a little bit, but I could see her when as soon as she started medicating, she could see. She still wore the thick glasses, but she could see. So that was my second time of really understanding how the medicine worked and seeing it with my own eyes. So that was just my inspirational moment.
Wow. And then what happened after that? What transpired after that?
So what happened after that, I traveled to, I was from Philadelphia and I moved to California and I joined the Green Rush at the time. I participated in actually getting involved in the dispensary business. So I had 5 dispensaries under one brand, and we thought we were helping a lot of people through our medicine. And then we had a knock on the door by the federal government and we got shut down. And when we got shut down by the federal government, they gave us a 14-day cease and desist. And then I proceeded to still focus on treatment of patients. And one of the things that was frustrating to me, I would see people with Parkinson's, and we would find a strain, let's say it was called Blue Dream, and that strain really worked. And then when I sent them out to a dispensary in California, we have a dispensary system. When I sent them to the dispensary, they would get that product, they would medicate, and they would call me up and say, it's not working. It's like, why isn't it working? And I realized that it wasn't Blue Dream. So either the grower didn't know what they were growing, they didn't label it correctly, or the dispensary didn't really realize or care. So I was really frustrated with that process. And I came across a video online from a gentleman named Kevin McKernan, who was the first person to genetically sequence cannabis. And to fast forward that a little bit, I ended up meeting with Kevin over some of my activity online and became a consultant for medicinal genomics. So my job was to really go around the country and collect samples, extract samples of DNA, and put them into a genetic sequencer that we can specifically identify that strain genetically is what it's supposed to do.
Wow, that's fascinating. So really what you're saying there is that the DNA of the human body and the DNA of the plant, you guys are just synthesizing that like that to present a treatment, which is precision-based treatment that goes towards the illness, whether it's Parkinson's or whether it's seizures or whether it's, have you done anything in the space of HPV, human papillomavirus yet?
Yeah, somewhat. So just to take one step back, so understanding the plant genetics, I got involved a lot in the endocannabinoid system. So working with scientists and doctors around the world, and we formed a medical company with a group of doctors called Earth Healthcare. And one of the things that we focused on is exactly what you said. It's doing, after we saw 23andMe and a lot of these other genetic companies, we said, hey, we understand that people have a different effect, because one thing that I medicate with, or somebody else who's got some sort of condition, if they medicate with the same thing, they may not get the same result. So we believe in the medicine that's much more personalized. So what we did was we looked at every single kind of genetic SNP that's out there in Cyberland and identified their cannabinoid studies that are associated with these SNPs. So what we did, we created a kit, a genetic kit that you would basically like a mouthwash. You rinse your mouth, you spit it back in, and you send it out for a genetic profile. Based on the genetic profile results that we get, we would know, number one, if you have a genetic variance in the SNP that will make you susceptible, that you won't be able to metabolize THC the way somebody else that doesn't have this variance. So now, if we're creating a formulation, we have to make sure that we titrate really low on THC, because you're missing an enzyme that allows you to digest and metabolize THC. That's one example. Another example could be there's a gene that's associated with the production of serotonin and dopamine. So if you have a variance on that specific SNP, that means that you most likely, at the very least, you're a little bit down. It could be that you're bipolar, that you have clinical depression, schizophrenia, all these different things are associated with that response. So if I know that there is a cannabinoid and terpene profile that we need to formulate to make sure that we boost your serotonin and dopamine production, and we avoid certain things, they'll reduce it. So there's a terpene, and we can go into cannabinoids and terpenes, but there's a terpene that is associated with making you drowsy, bringing you down, and that terpene is myrcene. So if I know that you have a genetic variance on that allele, I want to avoid myrcene, and there's another one called limonene that promotes serotonin and dopamine production. So I want to make sure that formulation includes limonene. So it can be as simple as that, and much more complicated as well, to make sure that we avoid certain things that we see that can create a harmful interaction, and we can focus on things that promote more of a healing type of process that's associated with you specifically.
Wow, you know, for me being a cannabis newbie, like I'm only 2.5 months into this journey, still navigating myself through it all. There's so many variables in this whole process of trying to find the right treatment. I've been on a lot of Facebook pages, and I've read the stories of people, and especially here in Australia, I suppose it's like this around the world, that when you realise, like me, I've got one last roll of the dice and I'm putting my faith in cannabis. You know, it's not the silver bullet, don't get me wrong, but, you know, I'm immersing myself in it because I can't do radio, chemo, or surgery anymore. The doctors have spent on me. They said, go away and die. So for me, it's like I'm placing almost faith in cannabis. But for me, navigating myself through the journey, trying to find out, well, what components of CBD, THC do I need, what dosage, what strains, what terpenes, what are the cannabinoids that I need to use, how will that match up with my cancer, will it cure my cancer? One thing I would like to know is my HPV, whether it can get in there and attack the HPV and get it out of my system, because the way I understand it, the endocannabinoid system, and a lot of people don't realise this, and a lot of people, it's only sort of been discovered in the last 20 years, is what I've been told, is that it's a very powerful source that overrides and governs the body of the immune system. So you've got the endocannabinoid system that governs the immune system, and the immune system really determines whether you're going to be healthy or not. Correct?
Yeah, that's correct. You're absolutely 100% right on. So because I have ADD, I have to paint images with my mind, and
yep.
I have to see it first, and then be able to present it to somebody else the way that my mind sees it. So I'll tell you the way that I visualize it.
Yeah.
So the endocannabinoid system is basically the system that's responsible for homeostasis. So that maintains balance in your body. So we produce our own versions of THC and CBD in our body as our own chemicals. There's anandamide, 2-AG. It's not exactly THC, it's not exactly CBD, but it's a variation of that, natural variation. So when our system becomes out of balance, we usually have a deficiency in either our natural THC or natural CBD, or a combination of the two. So when we have that deficiency, our body usually responds with an inflammation. So when we have an inflammation, that inflammation then sends a signal to our brain, to our central nervous system, and that signal is usually in the form of pain. So it says, hey, we have some pain, let's go and fix that pain. So there's all kinds of receptors that say, okay, attach these proteins and attach glutamate, attach more 2-AGs, and let's go down this neurotransmitter tunnel and go address this inflammation. Now that the inflammation has been addressed, the signal comes back that there's no more pain. So that's your natural balance. However, when you have a deficiency, you have to attach other forms to be able to fill that deficiency. And luckily for us, we have this amazing plant in nature that has both THC, both CBD, and we're born with receptor sites to accept that. So our receptor sites for THC are located in our central nervous system, and those receptors are CB1 receptors. Our receptor sites in our immune system are CB2 receptors, and they attract CBD. And CB1 attracts THC. So it's basically like a lock and key type of mechanism. So when we have an imbalance, the amount of CBD and the amount of THC that we can take in from the plant itself, from cannabis, that helps to rebalance and create homeostasis back in our systems. Cancer is a very interesting, unfortunately, is a very interesting mutation. And what cancer does, once again, the way I visualize it, it has this protein layer that sort of surrounds it. And the purpose of cancer is twofold. Number one, to consume, eat as much as it can. And the second one is to multiply, grow, and metastasize. So if you have an inflammation normally, your body recognizes that inflammation and let's go fight that inflammation. But cancer, because it has this protective layer, this protein layer, the information from that inflammation never gets back to your central nervous system. It blocks it. So now it's eating and growing without us realizing that it's there. And the only way you can say is in a blood test or in a scan, or, you know, it starts pushing up against something else, it sends a signal. So that is the challenge of cancer, because it's so stealth in our bodies. It's hard for us to pick it up. And when we identify it in one place, guess what? We still missed it in another place because it may have metastasized somewhere else. So that's the bad news about cancer. The good news about cancer from a cannabinoid study is that CBD and THC, the combination of the two, really work well to be able to break down the protein layer and attach those sites where the cancer feeds itself. And that's what CBD does. CBD is a natural anti-inflammatory cannabidiol. So it goes in and tries to reduce the inflammation, and it binds to the receptor sites where the cancer consumes. On the THC side, what it does, since the cells have this program to multiply, it actually goes in and reprograms that cell not to multiply. So now the cell only has one purpose, and it's to consume. And if it has that purpose to consume, and it has a difficult time getting its food, its blood supply, because CBD is also addressing that, it begins to consume itself. So it commits sort of self-suicide. And that's the way cannabis works on shrinking those tumors until they're gone. And there's, you know, many studies out there and case studies to show that how it works in bodies for different types of cancers.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like for me personally, you know, when I, back in February, was told that I had cancer for the 4th time and there wasn't anything they could do. Like when I was looking at the PET scan, they said, oh, you know, your neck is just riddled with inflammation. And they couldn't actually go in and do a biopsy. Like I've got, you know, inflammation around the left and right lower tongue, in the lymph nodes, here in the jaw, here in the chest and underneath my arm. So I've got all these inflammation spots. So when you start talking to the oncologist about inflammation and doing a biopsy to confirm whether it's cancer, they say 99.9% it is, go away and die. You sort of go, your mind goes, well, you know, how do you sift through all that and try and work out what's going on? So when I started to do research on cannabis, and there was lots of references about a potent anti-inflammatory within the plant, I thought, well, hey, if I just ingest CBD and THC, well, then my inflammation will go down. And over the last 2 months, I can validate it and say it that I think 30% of my inflammation's gone down, to the point where, you know, I've been on fluids for 6 months and now I'm starting to eat some solid foods, and I've put on another 7 kilos over the last week. So, yeah, that's good signs, and I don't have that restriction in the back of my neck. So to me, that's a validation it does work. So, you know, that's the power of the plant.
Yeah, absolutely. You're only touching on the cannabinoids, which are the genetics of the plant. Once you start mixing in, and we have identified probably 80 or so cannabinoids already, and over 100 different terpenes. And terpenes are prevalent in nature. I mean, most things that grow have terpenes in them. And, you know, there's terpenes like beta-caryophyllene there's an anti-inflammation terpene. And it's found in black pepper, and it's found in a lot of different substances, but it happens to be very concentrated in certain strains of cannabis. And if you combine beta-caryophyllene a certain percentage with your cannabinoid percentage, that is an extra anti-inflammatory effort to be able to go in and shrink that inflammation. And I'm a big believer of inflammation, and inflammation is what causes a lot of the different symptoms and conditions that we have. So when we are out of balance and out of homeostasis, that's our body letting us know. And our body wants to heal. We just have to help it. We have to give it the right amount of substance to be able to heal. So give it the tools. And I mean, you are an amazing example of the first one, which is mindset. I mean, I believe it all starts with mindset. Once you have faith and you have hope and you have the right mindset, and I've talked to so many people that said, you know, we were given 6 months to live, and 6 years later, they're living, and you know, and they're living good lives because they decided they're not going to believe. Nobody can tell you how long you have.
True.
There's no, well, I don't want to get into a whole, religious spirituality, but there's a higher power that I believe in that is the only thing that can tell me when the time is up. Nobody else can. No doctors, nobody. And if I refuse to believe that, which you refuse to believe, now you have the right mindset. And whatever it is, spirituality, meditation, yoga, whatever it is that you connect to, that's your first phase. And when you start believing and having faith in that, your neurotransmitters go to work. Your body wants to heal itself, and they don't know, is it real or is it you're just thinking about it? So you're now giving your body a head start. It's trying to heal, and because you believe in it. That's one. Number two, it's about what you put in your body. So I talk about food made with love. So when you consume food made with love, your body will give you love back. And it's avoiding preservatives, additives, chemicals, genetically modified foods, simple sugars, simple carbohydrates, all these things, and being able to ingest good, clean foods, organic, green leafy vegetables, have a balanced diet. That's putting good nutrients in your body, and you're adding the fuel to help your body fight. Once you do that, your body will reward you for that. And then the third thing is a balance of your endocannabinoid system that actually is responsible, as you said, maintain homeostasis and also boosting your immune system. When you give your immune system fuel, now all those three things combined, now you have a really good army on your hands to be able to battle anything.
Yeah, on the same hymn sheet as you, mindset, for viewers, we just had a previous discussion, on Skype, not on this call, but, we both spent some time hanging around Anthony Robbins. I worked for Anthony Robbins for 7 years, and when people ask me, well, how did you react to the news that you've got cancer? Well, I said, well, I didn't react, I responded. So it's like what Tony says. It doesn't matter what happens to you, it's what you do about it that matters. And you have to constantly reframe a bad experience and reframe it into a good experience. And that's what I did. And that's why, like if I go back to 2012, I was told I had an 80% chance, and then 2015 I had a 30% chance, and now I've got a no chance situation. But it's like mindset is crucial. Like you've got to be bigger than the event at hand, and tackle it full on. So yeah, mindset's important. Food, what you put in your mouth is important, and understanding the endocannabinoid system and how the cannabis plant works with that is also the third component. So I'm with you there, buddy. I'm with you.
Yeah, I think that some of the challenges that we experience is because it is still in the United States a Schedule I drug. So
yeah,
associated with heroin and some other meth and some other drugs that really are not looked at the same way from a medical standpoint. So you have that. You had a federal program that provides medical cannabis. The federal government cultivates cannabis in University of Mississippi in the United States, and they held patent. So there's a lot of hypocrisy that goes on in the United States, and I think a lot of cues from around the world come from the way the United States runs its drug program. However, there are other countries. I look at Israel. I look at Canada. Other countries that are sort of on the forefront of real medicinal research in cannabis. And we have to look to those countries to get some of that research and communicate. But the issue is we have not had enough clinical trials, human clinical trials. I know the GW Pharma has a clinical trial on Sativax product for Dravet syndrome for epilepsy that are testing now with cannabinoids, but there's not a lot. However, I can tell you that the community itself, we communicate all the time, and I see patients on a daily basis, 5, 6 patients every single day for years. So, and then we see patients again. What happens to them a month later after their protocol? And that communication is the most important thing. I mean, you can do clinical trials, and they do clinical trials on mice, and we see that. But The clinical trial that I'm most interested in is you and people like yourself, people that are actually consuming this product and having amazing results from this plant. And once you see this, and yeah, there are specifics to that we haven't really gotten to. Like I said, we've identified so many different cannabinoids and so many different terpenes and how they work within individually, and then how they interact with each other. We just don't have enough studies. We have to study it more. But I can tell you that I haven't had anybody that had negative results. Some people may have consumed too much, which happens all the time. You have to still be very diligent and be aware. And then how you consume the medicine is really important as well. So an example of that is edibles. So there's different ways to consume this product, right? So you can smoke it, you can vape it, you can use it as a tincture, you can take it as a sublingual spray, you can use it as a topical, you can also consume it. Yeah, you can put it all, amazing. We talked about this too before. I'm a big believer of inside out, outside in. So if you're consuming inside, great, and then use a topical on the outside, it's gonna help twofold. But an edible is interesting because it depends on how your body functions, but what happens is your liver converts THC, and depending on how your liver functions, it converts it to something called 11-oxyhydroxide delta-9 tetracannabinol, so 11-OH. So it's a different substance than just THC itself, and it's more powerful. It's a different type of psychoactive effect. So THC is the one substance in cannabis that has a psychoactive effect. Most of the other ones, CBN has a slight psychoactive effect, but for the most part, it's only THC. So when you consume it orally or you medicate through smoking, it goes directly into your bloodstream, attaches to your CB1 receptors in your central nervous system, and you have a psychoactive effect. Now, if you consume it through an edible, it goes into your digestive system, your liver converts it, and you have sort of an opposite reaction because now it's a delayed reaction, so you're not getting it immediately, and then your body expresses that. And then it attaches to your central nervous system. So you have a body to head high, and it takes longer to come on, and it lasts a lot longer. So also, if you have some challenge in a gene like CYP2C9 gene, that gene, SNP of that gene, is associated with an enzyme that you need to break down THC. So if I know a person's consuming cannabis has that genetic variance, I want to be very careful to do two things. Number one, be very careful in the amount of THC that this person consumes. Number two, as an edible, if you're missing that enzyme in your digestive system, you're going to have a very, very hard time metabolizing THC. So I would definitely recommend staying away from an edible and going more with a tincture or sublingual type of product that doesn't go into your digestive system as much. So
depository, same thing.
Correct.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
It's just, I'm sitting here thinking, right, I always put my mind into the mind of a patient that goes, right, well, okay, I want to put my faith in cannabis as a treatment, and where do I start? So just run that through with me. How, if a patient turns up at your clinic at the healthcare, the Earth Healthcare, what's the first step? What's the process that you take them through to get them access to the product?
Yes. So it depends. It depends where you are in your cycle. So some people are sick and they don't really know. So we have a group of doctors. So they can schedule an appointment with their doctor, and we can send them out to functional labs, blood work, etc. And then the doctor can go and recommend cannabis. They would have a consultation with me, and depending on if they had a genetic exam or they had a genetic panel or not, I may recommend, I'm a big fan of understanding your genetics anyway, I would recommend that they get a genetic panel done. However, I'm not going to wait for those results to come back to make a recommendation. So I'm going to interview you and talk about what is your history with cannabis, what is your medical history, and share the notes that the doctor is going to share with me. I'm going to talk about your symptoms, what your symptoms are, and then your history with cannabis. So if I talk to you and you say, hey, I had some bad experiences and I know what type of bad experience you had, I'm going to be very, very careful because I don't know if the genetics came back yet. I'm going to be very careful to recommend a high dose of THC. I believe in microdosing. Titrate low and work your way up. So now that I understand that, I can make a recommendation on a certain formulation. So I can say, based on your condition, I recommend a 1 part CBD, 1 part THC. It should be minimally psychoactive. And during the day, add in some terpenes called limonene and maybe beta-carophylline. And how is your sleep cycle? Well, I have a hard time sleeping at night. Okay, so let's remove beta-carophylline in a nighttime formula, limonene, and add in myrcene, which will help you sleep. So I will come up with a protocol of different ratios that I recommend based on statistics of patients that we have already treated. So now I have that formulation and I can make a recommendation of these are the different websites that you can possibly order those products from. So we do formulate custom formulations for certain patients that it's very difficult for them to be able to obtain something. But I do have farms and companies that I trust that make a really good product. And those I recommend as well, especially in California, because it's a state that has a medical program that you can go and easily obtain some of those formulations. Now, the challenge becomes, what do you do in states that don't? I was speaking to a woman in Louisiana in the US, and she said that they can actually still go to jail for a joint, for having any cannabis. So it makes it very, very challenging for those patients to be able to obtain their medicine. And my recommendation to them is, do you have a friend in California or any of the other states that have either medical or recreational program? You have to take the risk or pay a visit. Some states like Nevada have a recreational program where they can, out-of-state visitors can actually get their cannabis there as well, just with their driver's license, as long as they're 21 and over. So it makes it very challenging for some people to be able to obtain their medicine, but our process is that interview process with a specific protocol recommendation on dosage, how much you should take, what is the ratio of product, different examples of different products that I know are tested, are clean, and that's really important. I tell people what to look for. You're an immunocompromised patient. You have to be very careful of microbials. You have to be very careful of heavy metals, pesticides, to make sure your product is tested, is clean. And when you consume a product, I recommend, more or less a sublingual spray. It's easier to dose, 2 sprays under the tongue or a tincture. And then we go through that process. And we don't throw it over the fence and then you forget about it. But we come back a month later and have another meeting and see how things are going. But the more information I can empower somebody with, because I believe that this is your medicine. It belongs to you. Nobody knows your body like you know. So if something doesn't feel exactly right, take it down. If something feels really good and you're starting to get used to it, titrate up a little bit. But that's where the power of cannabis comes in. There's no real negative side effects per se. So you're able to control a little bit more of your own dosage. And that's the process, how it works. Now, when I get the genetic results back, based on that, we modify the formulation. So if we need to, if we see certain things that are specific in your report that have genetic variants that's associated with cannabinoid, then we modify your formulation suggestion.
So can the DNA process, if somebody sends blood off and say, for example, they haven't got cancer, but they send the blood off thinking they might have a DNA profile that is genetic that says that, they might have potential that they might get cancer because their previous family members have. Would it pick up on that, and could the process that you've got be a preventative cancer treatment process so that they put the cancer at bay, or am I on the money with saying it that way?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there are certain things that we flag on the genetic report. So if you could see the sample, the report on Earth Healthcare, I think we may have some samples, or on Straight and Genie. So at the end, there's SNPs, and then we have flags on certain SNPs that are associated with, a serious condition. So let's say there is a flag on an allele that's associated with Alzheimer's disease, right? So if we have that, we will flag you, and we recommend that you speak to a doctor within our practice or your own family physician. And there are studies associated with CBD as a preventative treatment to help to prevent Alzheimer's. So if we find that allele and we find that variance, we would then recommend that you get on a supplemental ratio of daily CBD just as a preventative. I mean, I take CBD on a daily basis anyway, because I think it's an amazing, amazing substance to be able to regulate my immune system. But that's one of the things that we recommend. Now, if we see that you have a genetic propensity to a certain type of cancer, once again, we'll funnel you to a physician, and you will talk to that physician, talk about options with that physician. And yes, there are ratios and there are formulations that you can do as a supplement with other types of vitamins that will help you hopefully reduce your risk and chance of getting cancer.
Yeah, I just sit here and I think about Australia and where we're at right now. We're just so bogged down in stuff because it's only relatively new to us here for the last, year and really the last 6 months. So a lot of people are not only, people in search for, cannabis as a medical treatment, but, doctors, there's reports coming up in the last week that doctors in certain states in Australia are clueless, they're not educated, they don't know what to do. So the government put in this special access system service category 1 and 2, and it guides people through the flow chart. But there's a big shutdown because the doctors can't really do anything. Some of them have got licenses, some of them don't, some of them don't care. It's just a real mess. So I don't know how it's all going to pan out. I have wishful thinking that it will, but how did that roll out in the United States, and especially in your states? How did the doctors get on board and embrace it and work with consultants such as yourself and work with the patient? It seems to be a bit of a, what's the word I'm looking for? Triage, is that what I'm saying?
Yeah.
How does it all work? How do you bring it all together to go boom and get access to the plant and put everybody out of their suffering?
It's Dr. Sanjay Gupta, who is a CNN correspondent and commentator. Yeah. Years ago, he came out against cannabis. This doesn't work, it's a drug. And then a year went by, and he did all this extensive research and actually came out with a documentary called Weed 2.0.
Saw it. Fantastic.
And he came out and said, I was wrong. I was wrong. I was completely 100% wrong. Now he's one of the biggest activists. He went on in front of the Senate and testified and said not only is it wrong to withhold this medicine to all these sick people who need it, it's immoral. So he believes in that. And the issue is education. So I was asked by a group of surgeons, and they're actually cancer surgeons that do reconstructive surgery on different cancer patients, that had things removed. So they work with cancer patients all the time. And they asked me to present to them about the business of cannabis. So I had a little PowerPoint presentation, and I included 2 slides on the endocannabinoid system, and the rest of it about business and legalities and everything else. So I was kind of, hey guys, I skipped through the endocannabinoid system and what is a synapse and neurotransmitters. And I said, you guys already know this, let me go back and talk about the business. And one of the doctors said, can you go back to that slide for a second? So I went back and I spent 40 minutes on the endocannabinoid system. And I came to a realization. They were never taught this in medical school. So they're learning as everybody else is learning. but you have to be able to be open-minded, to be willing to learn. And a lot of doctors are not, because they were taught a different way, Western, let's just treat the symptom and keep giving opioids and all this other stuff that bind to the same receptors, the cannabinoid receptors, except they block the pain. So they block the pain from going through the neurotransmitter, but they don't do anything to take care of, heal what's causing the pain, the inflammation. So anyway, when I talk to these doctors, that was like an aha moment for me. I came to realization they don't know. So the more we educate, the more the doctors are going to be receptive to our education. I feel those things are going to change. I'll tell you a little bit of an anecdote for a second. So my father is not the biggest fan of cannabis. Never was. He was, came from an old generation, and he's not a believer. Never was. And he used to be an athlete, and he has now he has a lot of arthritis in his hands. So he finally, I guess as a last resort, said, I'm willing to try something because nothing is working. My one hand, I can't do anything, can't bend it, it hurts. My other hand, there's 2 fingers that are just killing me. So I recommended a product, non-psychoactive, had some THC, had mostly CBD, some glutamine, etc. And I recommend this product. 2 days later, he calls me up. He goes, how long do I take this stuff for? It's not working. Well, I'm not even sure. How do I know? I said, all right, take it for, I said, let me ask you a question. Does it still hurt? Yes. Does it hurt less, more, or the same? He goes, maybe a little bit less. I said, okay, just to make sure it's not psychosomatic, keep taking it. It's not hurting worse, right? No. So a week goes by. He called me up on a Friday, I think, and he said, Len, I got to tell you, as much as I was skeptical, my one hand doesn't hurt at all. My other hand, one finger, 100%. Now, I'm not saying this works for everybody, but the point I'm trying to make is there's no way it's psychosomatic, because he would love for it not to work, to prove a point, but it's working. And it's working to a point now where I spoke to him, and he's like, I'm going to recommend this stuff to your mom. And I'm like, good luck. That's a whole other thing to be able to penetrate. But the point being is, we need to educate and put as much of these types of testimonials yourself, and hundreds and thousands of people from all over the world. I get flooded with emails of people saying, oh my God, the fog has lifted. I can actually be myself. I stopped some of these other drugs, and the pain has subsided. I can function. I can go out, and quality of life is extremely important. I've treated patients that are really, really late stage, and all you want to do is maintain relieve pain and maintain them for a while. However, if you're going to sedate somebody the whole day long with high doses of THC, and they're going to be sedated and sleeping, that's not a good quality of life. That's surviving. And who wants that? You want to make sure that you create a ratio that allows you to live your life. So if you want to be sedated and you want to have a good quality of sleep, okay, we can formulate something at nighttime that's a little bit different. But during the day, you want to function. You don't want to be high all day long and be sleeping sedated. So those are the things that we have to be aware of. And how you educate people and how you get the word out in Australia is doing this. What you're doing right now is the best form of education that you can do. You have a testimonial, a personal testimonial. You have somebody like me that is able to see, hundreds of people all the time and have the same kind of a reaction to this amazing plant. And the more that we do that, and the more doctors that we involve in this, it's working from the ground up, I guess.
Yeah, well, education is really what I'm about, and that's why I'm doing this. My mission and purpose is really just to educate people to have more conscious awareness around the medicinal attributes of the cannabis plant. And for me, I've been thinking about it lately, about why there's resistance and why there's blocks and roadblocks with the medical profession and the system. And we're hammering them over the head with the plant, and then when you take cannabis, then people go, well, that's marijuana, that's weed, or that's pot, or whatever. So you got all those negative names that's been given. As you know, marijuana was given that name to cannabis because the Americans shanghaied it and hijacked it, but restore it back to its authenticity and and it's really give the plant its respect for what it has as a medicinal power. And I'm just thinking, well, you know, instead of going to the doctors and hammering them about the plant, we should be approaching the doctors to say, hey, why don't we study the endocannabinoid system and really immerse yourself in that, and then work out, you know, or help them discover how the cannabis plant really works with the endocannabinoid system, and then approach it that way. What's your thoughts on that? Like,
Yeah, and that's kind of
angle, you get a different angle, and you get a different result.
Absolutely, I agree with you. That's sort of the, you know, the example that I brought up with those surgeons. I didn't speak about the plant. It was all about the endocannabinoid system at first, and I assumed that they knew about it. That's why I skipped over everything, and I was like, oh, endocannabinoid, yeah, you guys know all this stuff. Synapse, and they didn't. And that was my sort of light bulb went on. I was like, that's my approach. Every single time that I speak to anybody, I always talk about the endocannabinoid system. And I ask them to give me what they know. Let's collaborate on our understanding of the endocannabinoid system. And I can provide them as much information as possible. And I ask them questions. You know, do you believe that there's an imbalance? Do you believe in anandamide? Do you believe in 2-AG? You know that there's enough studies out there to support that. Okay, well, and then we move into, is there a substance that can kind of mimic that? And what are the CB1 receptors for? Why do we even have them? Do you believe in? No? Okay, let me show you a bunch of studies. So you're absolutely right, Tony. This is the way to be able to do that, is sort of chisel, you know, chisel away to little by little. And I'll tell you one other thing that unfortunately has been sort of a negative way to get a positive response. And this has happened to me recently numerous times. The non-believers, people who did not accept this, who were brainwashed by, you know, reefer madness and everything else, all that culture, and you know, your brain on drugs and all that stuff. Unfortunately, what's been happening is, in the United States, the largest the fastest growing population of cannabis users are baby boomers. People are getting older now; they're having aches and pains, even if they don't have a serious condition. When somebody's non-believer and somebody in their immediate circle gets sick, somewhere, somehow, somebody says, hey, did you think about using cannabis? And that's when the phone calls start from the non-believers. And when they see that it actually works for somebody in their immediate circle, it flips. They become an activist. And I've seen this over and over and over. They say, I didn't believe it, but it worked for me. My dad, I didn't believe it, but it worked for me. Let me see if I can get your mom at the basic family level. And that's the kind of thing that we need to do, top down, bottom up.
Well, that happened to me in Melbourne when I saw Michael Stootman, who cured his great big cancer tumor on his neck. That was validation for me. So that's how I got converted to cannabis, I call it. So, you know, that's important. I just want to go back to the endocannabinoid system. At what point, when you discovered the endocannabinoid system and you went, what's this? How did you immerse yourself in the learning and the understanding of the cannabinoid system? Where did you start and where did that journey take you? Because you're very knowledgeable about it. Just tell me about that. Say more about that.
So it started with the research that I started doing with the plant. And then I came across, I always heard Raphael Mechoulam. I always heard about his research, but I never really immersed myself in that. And when I started discovering the plant genetics, I'm like, okay, CB1, CB2, let me dig a little bit deeper and widen my net and see what is that affiliated with. And then I came across my understanding of the endocannabinoid system, and I became obsessed. I mean, this is my purpose. This is my passion. So there's a tremendous amount of information on the internet. If you look up endocannabinoid system, it takes you on a journey. That's an amazing journey. You can go on the NCBI database and start looking at a tremendous amount of peer-reviewed essays that have already done, and then you can type in, you know, endocannabinoid system and cannabis, and you can see what research has been done that's associating endocannabinoid in cannabis. But this is something that is a passion project. So if you're interested in it, the information is there. And every single day, there's more and more information that's out there. And I dig deeper because I also want to identify the actual genetic SNPs. So when we do a lot more research on what genetic panels we're going to put into place, I also have to go back and study the endocannabinoid system a little bit more and see, okay, so if I have this genetic variance, what is the effect within the endocannabinoid system this can have? So it's sort of this balancing act. So either understanding how the system works and then understanding how the different genetic variances work and how they all affect the endocannabinoid system. So it's a journey that's available. The information is available and it's becoming more and more prevalent. It's just knowing what to look for. And if you just simply Google endocannabinoid system, your journey can begin and it can take you in many different directions what actually appeals to you and connects with you.
Hey, I hear this, and I wish that like today I had a folder like this, and I'll show you. There's a folder that I put together yesterday, and it's that thick. And that basically is the comprehensive report on the cannabis extract movement and the use of cannabis extracts to treat diseases. So it has the endocannabinoid system in there. But it also, half of that is all the stories from all around the world of every person that has every illness and how they treated their illness with the cannabis plant. And I'm reading that now, I'm going, whoa. And then I'm thinking, right, I wished I had a program where I could go into the doctors here in Australia, go into their medical practice and say, well, let's discuss this cannabis plant, but the endocannabinoid system, we're going to talk about that. So that's what I'm hoping to do, is to maybe get some sort of manual or training program together that's all to do with the endocannabinoid system, and lead in with that, and then introduce the plant as the healing component to that.
Yeah, I think everything that you're doing, myself with Dr. Alan Lawrence, we wrote a manual. Originally, when we got together, he's also part of the Institute for the Advancement of Integrative Medicine. And one of the things that we talked about initially when we got together, and he's the medical director for Earth Healthcare, the medical company. When we got together, he talked about doctors not, and he celebrated his 50th year in medicine this year. He talked about doctors not knowing the endocannabinoid system.
Yeah.
So he and I wrote a manual, actually, and it's pretty clinical, and it's for doctors. We just never really got pretty busy. We never really created a vehicle to get that information out to doctors. But you know that we do have pretty in-depth information as well on the endocannabinoid system. So maybe we can collaborate on something like that as well.
Yeah, put the menu together, buddy. Give it to me. So I can go out there. So I can go out there and share it around. Okay, I'm just aware of the time here. We're nearly coming up to 1 hour, but hey, we could talk for 2 hours. But let's talk about this. If a cannabis newbie came up to you and said, I want to know all about this cannabis plant, what would you say to that person in that moment?
I would say that this medicine has been used for 10,000 years. It's got extreme proven results for many different things. Do your research. But I would say, if you ever want to try anything on yourself, do you have any aches and pains? Is there anything in your body that's bothering you? And at the very least, I found a lot of success with getting people to try like a CBD cream. So if they're skeptical about it, say, look, this is not psychoactive. You can try it. It's not going to get you high. It is a component of the cannabis plant. And if you want to know the history behind it, I can tell you. But try a cream. If you put on your joints, wherever you have some inflammation and pain, see how it works for you. And 90% of the time, somebody will come back to me and say, you know what? I tried that stuff, and it actually worked for me. How can I find out more? So the barrier to entry is low if you start out with something that produces a result and will not have any negative side effects. Start out and say, hey, take a hit off a joint. that's probably not the best way for me to introduce medical cannabis to somebody that's skeptical. And then I would send them out to do some research, some videos. Hey, take a look at the CBD Project CBD. Take a look at where Raphael Mechoulam's institute is doing in Israel. Just do a little bit of research. If you want, I can send you some links and I can give you some information. So it's not propaganda that's coming from me. It's coming from the scientific and medical community. Well, read some testimonials. Watch The Sacred Plant. Watch the thing that I did with my parents initially, I asked them to watch Weed 2.0, the Sanjay Gupta documentary that I mentioned. And when they saw Charlotte, the girl that had 100 seizures per day, and she couldn't get her medicine in New Jersey, and she had to travel to Colorado and create a residence there, and then they were filming the whole thing. They saw that by taking this incredible medicine, her seizures went from 100 a day to 0. You can't deny that. It's visual. There's no way to deny that. You can say, oh, it worked for her, it won't work for me, but you can say that it did work for her. So it might work for you if we get more specific. So those are the things I usually tell people that, watch for yourself. I'll send them links, educate yourself. And, there's some videos that I've done and some talks that I've done where, the last one I was at the Vegas Cannabis Summit and I gave an hour-long talk about this. And there was a line of people afterwards that had all these questions about, hey, I have a parent who had this, or I have this, or I'm a veteran and I have PTSD. What can I take? I tried something. I had a really bad experience. That's great. I understand that. What did you try? They don't know. So let's titrate low and make sure that you have a positive experience. When you have a positive experience, then you'll become an activist and you'll tell other people about that.
Yeah, when you talked about Gupta, it was like there was a guy that had the belief that it was evil. And then all of a sudden he had that, what's the word I'm looking for, metanoia experience where he completely radically changed his belief and just switched over and shifted. So for him, what you're saying and what I get out of that is that when he saw, I could call it a miracle, or when he saw something happen and it validated it for him, his beliefs switched over. Is that it? How would you sum up his experience?
I believe that being a medical doctor, there's some skepticism involved. So, and I'm not a doctor, but I've worked with enough doctors where I can understand how the mind works. They see something working, and now you want to understand why. So now that you want to understand why, they start doing the research. And when they go into the science and see, and there's plenty of videos, you can go to YouTube and put in, Parkinson's, cannabis, and you can see videos of a person within 2 minutes stop with their tremors. When you start seeing that and you start seeing a pattern, and then if you're inquisitive enough, you're going to ask yourself, why is this happening? And then you start going in and digging a little bit deeper, and it's illuminating. Why are all these people that have all these seizures and they're medicating only on this plant? Why are the seizures stopping? It has to do with this. It has to do with the endocannabinoid system. And why at some point maybe it stopped and then they start up again? Why? So if you are of the medical profession and you have a little bit of an inkling of an open mind to regarding the science around it, you will start looking at it differently than saying, oh, look at the kids in the corner, or look at they're dabbing, or they're smoking blunts, or this culture, that culture. I have nothing against the recreational culture. I think everybody should have the freedom of choice to do what they want to do. But as a medical community, you have to kind of separate the two and say to yourself, that's one thing. Everybody can use and abuse anything, alcohol, etc. But if you really look at the medical side of things and you look at the testimonials and you watch the videos, I mean, your eyes are not going to deceive you. You see it and you talk to people. And when you start looking at that and you start seeing the evidence pile up, there is no other way to look at it in any way. And I've seen many people change their opinion, in just that way. Seeing it, saying, why not? I'll try some CBD. I never want to get high. In high school or in college, I ate a bowl of spaghetti that had pot in it, and I got really high, and I'll never try it again in my life. Okay, understood. How about trying something that will not have any psychoactive effect? Some CBD, something with some beta-carotene. Oh man, my ankle hurt from running. Now that I rub this cream on my ankle, 2 days later, it doesn't hurt. So something is working, right? Right. Let's expand on that. So those are the experiences that I've had personally with people who were sort of closed-minded to it.
Yeah, well, that happened to me. That was, watching Michael Stoopman in Melbourne up on stage, second last speaker on the last day. I just sat there like a deer that had been hit with spotlights. My eyes were like that, and I raced down to him. I'll be truthful. I raced down to him in all desperation to say, "Dude, you found the cure. Like, I need to talk to you." And then, he told me, the CBD and the THC, and we've become great buddies. And I've interviewed him, and now Michael and myself are out there doing some magical stuff. And I think we're a great partnership because we can show to people and validate that, I had the surgery, radio, chemo, told go away and die, and he went another path and used cannabis, and everything's worked out for him. I'm still alive, he's still alive, but I think that's the message we're taking to the people, and hopefully we can, like this video today is, let's finish on this note. If a doctor was in a lift and you met a doctor in a lift going from the first floor to the second floor in a lift, and he was resistant, not knowing anything about, the endocannabinoid system or the cannabis plant, and somehow you guys initiated a discussion, he's asked you, what do you do, and whatever, and you asked him, well, you're a doctor, and, what do you know about cannabinoid or cannabis or whatever. What's something that you could say in one sentence that would cut through to the doctor to get them to at least open their mind that, I need to open my mind to possibilities here that maybe this plant does have some substance? I know it's a big question, but what would you say in one sentence?
I would say that, first of all, in America, it's an elevator, not a lift.
Yeah, these words.
No, I would say that.
Tomato.
Exactly. So I would say that you believe in genetics, and the future of treatment is personalized treatment. So you're right. Maybe there are some things that will not work for some people, but there are some things that work for other people. So if you're looking at it from a genetic standpoint, there are different genetic variances that actually appeal to different types of cannabinoids. And we're not talking about, a psychoactive effect. So
what you're saying there is, what you're saying there is plant genetics and body genetics is what this is all about, what you're all about.
Correct. It's the alignment of the human endocannabinoid system and the genetics that each individual possesses with the genetics of the actual plant. And what can we do to do more to realize that how can we get closer to more personalized medicine? So as a doctor in the elevator, would you be open to actually looking at something like that we can align our endocannabinoid or our own personal genetics with endocannabinoid genetics? There's a lot of doctors that say, hey, I tried this medicine and for some reason it worked for 9 people, but the 10th person it doesn't work for. So this is traditional medicine. And I believe that, that's something that was worth looking at in cannabis, personalized medicine.
So what would be, what's the word I'm looking for, a metaphor or whatever, or something that, it's like, you take your car down to a car tyre place, and you take your car down, you're looking for a tyre, you go in and say, right, I want this tyre, I want this mag, and then they take you through the process, and then they put the mags and the wheels on your car and you drive off. What would be an analogy or a metaphor or something like that you could come up with that sort of explains that?
I think that I'll use the car analogy. So you put the tire on the car, but that tire is the wrong size model or the wrong radius. Will it fit? It will fit. Will it not drive correctly? It will not drive correctly because that tire has a specific radius, model number, and size that's specific to that model car. That's the same thing with cannabinoids and medicine in general. You have your own system. You have your own way you metabolize different things. Medicine is specific to you. Can you look at it as a bucket? 80% of the time it'll work? Yes. But there's 20% of the time where it may not work as well. So you have to get much more specific. So I've just borrowed your analogy, your metaphor in terms of, yes, it will work just because the tire fits in that car. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's the right tire for that car. And if you continue driving on it, it'll wear unevenly and it actually create some negative effects for you.
Wow. The reason why I asked that yesterday, I was driving the car and it was wet here in my van, my Ford Custom van, and I came to a roundabout and I took off and they're brand new tires and I was like skidding all over the road and I thought, wow, that's not good. So that's what I just came up. That's why I used the van and the tires.
It works.
Yeah, all right. I'm just aware of the time here. And okay, just to finish up, what's just one last thing you can share and then we'll close off and say thank you for sharing your time with us.
Yeah, I mean, one last thing is I'm truly humbled. I am grateful for the opportunity to have this platform. I'm so connected to this purpose. I searched for a long time. I've been in the industry for 26 years or so. And
yeah, a long time.
I'm finally aligning with my purpose. There's nothing greater than getting an email, getting a text, getting anything as a testimonial from a person saying, hey, you know, this helped me so much. I have a new lease on life. And the only thing that I want to leave with is saying cannabis doesn't have to be a last resort. You don't have to wait till you tried everything else to try cannabis. Look at it as an alternative to treatment right away. Because sometimes when you're looking at it as a last resort, it may be, you may have some other challenges. You've already taken a number of opioids, so you have those receptors blocked. You have to titrate accordingly to be able to overcome those receptors. So it creates a lot of different challenges. When you look at any type of treatment, any type of integrative treatment, look at cannabis as one of the first alternatives, not one of the last alternatives, and educate yourself. Do your genetic panels, go to earthhealthcare.com, take a look at what we do, take a look at a number of other resources around you, email me, contact me, or
yeah. How does somebody contact you? Like, I don't know what Australians are going to do here and how you might be able to help them, but hey, share the love.
Yeah, I mean, email me at lenmay@earthhealthcare.com. I don't know if I have to spell it, but it's Earth, like the planet we live on, healthcare, like we provide healthcare.
Yeah, we'll put the link. We'll put the link up in Vimeo and all around, share it and whatever.
I'll make myself available as a resource. You know, I'm very tied up, grateful and fortunate to be tied up with you know, helping as many people as possible during a day. But I will allocate time. You know, get a consult scheduled. We want to help as many people as possible. And the more people like yourself around the world that see this, that recognize this, that have me on as a guest, I'm doing a big conference this weekend called MJAC in California. And the more I can be out there, the more people I can educate. You know, the power of the internet is amazing. I mean, we're across the world having this conversation, and it's amazing to be able to take this and deliver it to other people that otherwise may not see this. So that's my message, is let's share the love. Let's share as much information as we can about this plant, and let's change the perception around the world that this is a healing plant that's been used for 10,000 years. And the only reason we don't use it anymore has nothing to do that it stopped working. It has to do only with politics and money. Yeah, politics and money, that's one of the biggest things. All right.
thank you very much. I really appreciate your time there, Len. Like I said, we could probably speak for another hour, but I'm mindful that, you know, and people's attention's online too. You know, when it gets to that hour mark, they're sort of dozing off and going other places and got other people to see and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, thank you from my heart, brother.
I appreciate it. I appreciate
sharing the love. And I hope maybe one day that what you're doing over there with the plant genetics and the body genetics, we can have a clinic here in Sydney that does the same thing. So, dude, we're going to talk.
Let's do it, brother. I'm all for it. I've never been to Australia, so.
We'll get you down here, and then I want to come over there and hang out over there.
Sounds good. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you so much.
You'll be down here within the next 12 months, I can rest assured. I'm thinking about putting on a conference down here in March next year. And the idea's there for the project, so let's just flush it out and see where it takes us.
I'm in.
All right, you'll be there.
Much love.
All right.
Appreciate it. All right.
Thanks, mate. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
See ya.